Welcome into another episode of the Young Terps podcast. Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner. Ahmed, we would usually start off talking football on a weekend pod, but let's go with the one that we got the instant reactions for. Terps drop two unexpected games down in Asheville.
Yeah, I think kind of going into the weekend, if you looked at the average Maryland fan and said that Maryland Revenue Sports was going to pick up one win this weekend and it'd be football, I think a lot of people would be looking at you pretty crazy. But Sunday night, that is where we are.
Yeah, it is. Brutal day for the Terps across the board. Losses in field hockey, women's basketball, men's basketball. Uh, Tough day. Only win Maryland athletics comes away with on the day is a 3-0 sweep in volleyball against Ohio State. But a couple of really ugly losses. The Terps, I guess let's go back to Friday. A tough one against the Davidson team that shot the lights out and is the best three-point shooting team right now in all of college basketball. But the Terps just close so many times, but they don't get it done.
Yeah, obviously Davidson was able to go into that break with a 1 point lead, and it just kind of felt like a game where the deficit or the gap always felt a little bit bigger than the score indicated. But in the end of the day, I mean, um, just Davidson, like you said, Davidson now leading the country in 3 point shooting, and Friday night was a big reason why. Obviously, finishing over 53% from three, and the last second three there with 14 seconds left ended up being the difference there. And again, it was just the consistent just lack of rotations. Dante Scott just losing his assignment. Really, that was what it was. In really pivotal situations, just kind of losing just complete awareness of his man. And in the end of the day, it ended up biting Maryland for their what would be their first of two losses.
Yeah, and that brings me to a topic that I really want to get into on this pod, but we'll leave it for after we talk about the games. Really felt like Jameer Young again was giving Maryland everything that he had against Davidson. Puts up 18 points for the Terps. A lot of pivotal plays down the stretch. Big shots come from him. Juju Reese joins in with a double of his own, but the Terps really left soul searching from deep yet again. Just not good shooting performance between Jamie Kaiser, Deshaun Harris Smith, Noah Batchelor, Jahari Long. How many guards can Maryland put in that just cannot make a three?
Yeah, and I think kind of the problem with it is kind of going into the year. I mean, every Maryland fan knew, just even watching last year. I mean, Ian Martinez was statistically the team's leading or the team's leading 3 point shooter. He left. Keem Hart, he was another guy who was able to knock down some pivotal threes last year. He left. You looked at Jameer Young. He was able to do it. He was capable of it. But you always looked at Jamie Kaiser Jr. as the guy that had that reputation kind of coming into College Park. And then Noah Batchelor as well, filling in that now what looks to be glaring weakness at the wing. But both of those guys being relied on really this year to kind of provide that 3 point shooting. They're far from the only ones, but definitely been a concern. Obviously, like you said, Maryland finished 5 of 23 on Friday. Felt like they just really couldn't get a bucket. But like you said, Jameer Young, Julian Reese was also able to get it going a little bit. Finished with 16 points, 11 rebounds for his eighth career double double. First of the season. But again, the 3 point shooting is kind of what really makes you scratch your head.
Yeah, that as well as again finding themselves out of position and really and it carried into the UAB game earlier today. The lineup that Kevin Willard is rolling with you know Dante Scott or at the three. I don't really know defensively if he can keep up with these small ball teams. When you get into Big Ten play, he'll probably play a lot of teams sized similarly to the lineup that Willard's been trying to work. But look, small ball mid major basketball is dangerous this time of year, especially against a bigger Big Ten team. And the Davidson game more so than the UAB game looked like every NCAA tournament game that Iowa or Purdue or Michigan State have lost come March. A smaller team that can spread the floor and shoot just jumps on you early, makes their shots, and look, you get a chance at the end, but just not enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, I felt like again, this Davidson team, they were able to, they provided that 3-point threat kind of going into the matchup, but I think again it was just kind of what Maryland was kind of unable to do. And again, we haven't really touched on the turnovers, which have been an issue. They were an issue in the season opener as well, but I think they kind of get masked in the win. But combined 28 turnovers over the last 2 games. That's another big issue as well for Maryland. It just kind of feels like there's a little bit too many issues. Kevin Willard kind of cautioned that it's going to take this team little bit of time there. But this team just kind of feels like it's very raw right now, and offensively, it just feels like there's also just no chemistry, no sets, and at times it just kind of feels like there's just frankly 5 guys on the court just working ISO ball, trying to find their own success. And you kind of wondered when Kevin Willard, and you get it from a scheduling perspective when he notes that Asheville, it's just a little bit early in the season, and it's just maybe too early, but I don't think anyone expected Maryland to kind of put a product like they did.
No, not at all. And you mentioned standing around the 5 guys. I felt like at times over the weekend there were also just some really poor shot selection, and that goes with the lack of ball movement. That goes with the I felt like consistent feeling of each player thinking like I need to do something right now that's going to propel this team to win. In football, we talk about personal fouls, a quarterback forcing the ball, and all that stuff. In basketball, when you get into ISO ball, pretty much you force the same things. Bad passes across the court that are going to get turned into turnovers going the other way. Bad shot selection, pull up jumpers that just aren't certain guys flow. I mean, when you look at a stat line, and not to really pick on one player individually because this definitely was a team effort, like Noah Bachelor's from Friday night, he's 2 for 7 on the game. He's 2 for 7. All of them are 3-point shots. And yes, he's supposed to be, that mix in the lineup, but in 20 minutes, you take 7 shots, all of them are threes. It's not a good look. No assists on that line, struggling again, just struggling to find any sort of rhythm, and a really deep bench. And you got to play rotations early in the year, but 5 best have to be on the court at one point, and it sort of showed when they went small ball against UAB.
Yeah, and kind of you touched on Noah Bachelor. I mean, I think it's a little bit more it's understandable for him. Just taking those 3-point shots, gonna just get with him having that 3-point label on him. But you look at Sunday afternoon, Jahari Long, he finished 1 for 5 from deep. Finished, I believe it was his first 3-point attempt that went through. He's probably a guy in 17 minutes. He's probably not a guy that you're allocating 5 3-point attempts to. So you touched on the shot selection as well, and yeah, turnovers, they loom large, and I think that was kind of a big reason, and why, especially on Sunday, why UAB was kind of able to really, once they took control, really hold on to it. But the shot selection, I think it all kind of goes back to Maryland trying to really being able to find itself. The backcourt itself feels like Deshaun Harris Smith is also, feels like he this weekend kind of showed him to be a freshman. A guy that kind of struggled to consistently find that success around the rim. Obviously, I know he was able to finish at 13 points against UAB, 4 of 12 from the field, knocked down all 4 free throws in the loss. But again, it feels like it's all small ball, or excuse me, small ISO, and it just feels like Jameer and Deshaun just kind of really aren't able to work with each other. So it just kind of feels like all these issues right now offensively are kind of interrelated a little bit.
Yeah, you mentioned the UAB game. Let's move on to that one. Terps fall today, 66-63. A lot of the same problems we've already talked about. A couple things that I'll point out. Ahmed, you already said it. Jahari Long with 5 3-point attempts for Maryland. Noah Bachelor starts the game, only gets 11 minutes, puts up 2 shots. Both of them are threes. He misses both. And then a guy that at this point, you mentioned Harris Smith and Jameer Young not being able to work together. Dante Scott's role in this team as a small forward at this point is very questionable. I just don't think that he's quite got the defensive capability or the speed to really truly play the three. Looked a lot better when he was in the game with Jordan Geronimo late when Maryland was trying to catch up back in a more comfortable 4 spot, especially against a smaller team.
Yeah, I think it was a better performance, just considering how Friday night went for Dante. But yeah, again, I think at this point, especially on the offensive side, I think you kind of know what to expect out of him. But just again, looked a little bit more comfortable. But Yeah, just it seems like he's kind of able to work that three though. Obviously, with Jordan Geronimo being able to find the four, and in game one, just them two being able to figure out how to work to play with each other. But it feels like Dante Scott being able to figure out how to really still be assertive at the four, Jordan Geronimo at the five. That seems to be like something that I think Maryland would be something they could kind of turn to. But again, just kind of Dante just needs to be a little bit more efficient. It feels like just kind of the fifth as a fifth year senior. There's just a little bit too many lackadaisical moments and too many just moments where he just disappears. And I think for especially early on in the stretch when you need some of these freshmen, to kind of get their bearing a little bit and kind of get situated. You need, especially your fifth year guys, you need them to kind of step up. And it just feels like Dante is just kind of another guy right now.
Yeah, Julian Reese, another player who has again tale of two games for Juju down low, fouls out of the game against UAB, 1 for 4 from the field, 3 for 4 from the free throw line. He puts up 5 points, adds 4 rebounds, 5 fouls. Um, Not sure. Maybe it was Demonte Dodd that was out there playing Julian Reese, but that is not the stat line the Terps want to see from their star big man.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Willard has made it pretty clear. He wants to go through Julian Reese early and often. And it felt like kind of against the UAB team that really lacked overall size, that Julian Reese would be able to find some success. And, Friday night, Davidson did a good job of doubling him in the post, and Juju did a good job of recognizing it, passing out. Unfortunately, the supporting cast really didn't step up. But on Sunday afternoon, like you said, finished 5 points, 4 rebounds. But foul trouble, that's 2 games and two times in 3 games now, where foul trouble has been an issue for Juju, which obviously I think for every Maryland fan going into the season, you knew that was issue number one or question number one when it came to Reese being able to take that next step as a Big Ten, one of the Big Ten's best big men. So, like you said, uncharacteristic performance, but one where I think Willard and Co. will look at the tape and figure out um, how to get that motor going, especially on offense.
Yeah, last 2 points for me, just two stats that are both concerning for the Terps. They fall to a mid-major team that shoots 1 for 9 from 3 point land today. That is something rare, something you don't see a lot of the time. Teams like Davidson hit over 50% from three, and you can kind of point to that and say they just got really hot in the game. The other one, Maryland's free throw shooting, enough to make up the difference in this one. 13 for 20 from the line against a UAB team that shot excellent from the free throw stripe, 91%, 21 of 23.
Yeah, but again, it just really felt like the turnovers were just really the big thing that just kind of struggled there. I mean, from the point where Maryland was able to build that 11-point lead until the 13-minute mark in the second half, UAB went on I believe it was a 28-9 run, featured 9 turnovers, and it was this the way that the steals. UAB ended up finishing with 10 steals on the day. Maryland finished, like I said, with 28 turnovers in 2 days. It just you kind of didn't really expect maybe that to be an issue with Jameer Young back, with Jahari Long, who, he was able to, maybe he didn't join College Park as, a veteran point guard, but he was able to, be a reserve point guard last year, filling off the bench, be a facilitator. So you expected him to be able to kind of run the point. Obviously, Deshaun Harris Smith has been able to run the point as well. But you obviously, and it's not just all in the backcourt. Obviously, some of them are coming in the front court as well, or just guards getting trapped in the paint. But again, you just kind of expect Maryland to take care of the basketball a little bit better. Like you said, against a mid-major, but more importantly, with some of those veterans and star power.
Yeah, Terps averaged 10 and a half turnovers roughly a game last year, which is in the top 40 in college basketball. And really, there's not much difference between like number 110 in turnovers per game and number one. That's about three, somewhere between 13 and the leader last year, Virginia, 8.5 turnovers per game. So that just gives you some perspective. Maryland, 28 turnovers over the entire weekend, 15 today against UAB, 13 against Davidson is not going to cut it. It's the careless ones. So like Dante Scott on Friday night, not fully establishing himself out of bounds while inbounding the ball. Guy's been
Yeah.
playing college basketball. I mean, that's one that gets you. And then today, when pressure is applied, the cross court passes against a kind of zone full court press, not really quite a full court press, but I guess pressure in the backcourt is the way you would put it. Um, those get picked off, and they're easy layups. It's giving up points. It's giving up not only possessions, but setting the other team up for layups. Not just being engaged in the game, and I think that is what gives Maryland fans PTSD of the last era of Maryland basketball, and it was not a good product for a pair of games that really should have gone in the win column when you look at the overall talent on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the long-term ramifications of this weekend. I mean, you're looking at potentially at least one, but potentially two losses that are kind of head scratchers on the NCAA resume. I think Maryland will end up getting there. They'll end up kind of figuring out its offensive identity and hitting its stride. Whether that's into the 2024 year or when remains to be seen. But again, it just felt like it for every Maryland fan this weekend. I mean, the product just didn't pass the eye test. And I think even if Maryland pulled out wins, neither of those wins would have been wins that would have really been convincing, or any Maryland fan would be pounding their chest saying, "Oh, we're a top 25 team." Like, just the way that Maryland was playing just felt very off. Felt like there's a long ways to go between now and what's expected to be a Big Ten contender.
Yeah. When I talked about the game earlier in the week, I said, it's a pair of games you can probably pick up a quad three and a quad two win at best. Now it's probably a loss against a quad four team, if not two quad four teams. I mean, if you go off of preseason ranking, a bottom tier A10 team and a bottom tier, what I guess, are they in
Yeah,
the American Athletic now, or are they
yeah.
still in the CAA? One or
No,
the other.
this is for first year for in the A10 for UAB.
Okay, so yeah, two again mid-major quad four teams, both picked not so good in their conference. So
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? I think there's another dimension to, or another aspect to kind of look at. Maryland's home slate is not great this year. Really, and obviously until conference play. Two losses. I mean, they'll play Villanova next Friday. Chance to potentially start 1-3. Just not a good way for fan support. Expected to kind of fill up Xfinity going into Big Ten play.
yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, this next week, the next game, a chance to kind of right the ship, definitely right the ship going into a tough Villanova environment on Friday night. That closes out the Gavitt games for, I guess it might be the last year of the Gavitt game. It might be the
Yeah.
last Gavitt game of the Big Ten and Big East relationship in early season play. Ahmed, let's flip it over. Bright side of things, Terps going bowling. We said it was going to be ugly. I said it belonged on a streaming service. I don't even know if it was streaming service worthy. Terps pull away in Lincoln 13-10 and get to 6-4 on the season.
I mean, like, someone had to win, and it just felt like, at the end, obviously, felt just grateful. Maryland was able to do that at the end, able to put that in the end, and just end that slide. First win since September 30th. But again, just being able to win in Lincoln, first win against Nebraska. I think those are obviously key ones. But again, far from a pretty game on the eyes. Talia finished 27 of 40 for 283 yards, one touchdown, one interception. But I think the big story of the game was the second half running game. Uh, Maryland finished the first half with 0 rushing yards on 7 attempts, and then finished the game with 101 yards on 19 attempts. So, excuse me, on second half with 19 attempts. So I think that's obviously just kind of with Maryland struggling to run the ball, especially in Big Ten play. Maryland kind of being able to lean on the ground game. Roman Hemby with the big fourth quarter there, especially on that final drive, setting up the eventual game-winning kick.
Yeah, Terps get it done. I'll echo a lot of your points on the game. It's always tough to win in the road, especially when you're in, I guess, the mental state that I would say Maryland football was in going into this one. Just really needing a game just to, I would almost say any game that had any result, which this one would fit that category. They needed it to go in the right direction, ultimately be able to walk away with a win and look at where they're at now in a much more comfortable place, getting that sixth win. And I know that's not what anybody expected or where Coach Loxley set the bar at being this season, but it's where you are right now, and you have to make the best out of those things. I'll point to a couple of stats in the positive of that. While Maryland wasn't able to run the ball, the pressure from a what is a talented front seven that Nebraska has, they only come away with one sack in the game. I thought Leah, executed the game plan as far as getting the ball out quickly, didn't put himself in too many bad positions. And when Maryland needed it, they were able to produce what I would say is actually two drives that were worthy of points. One that Roman Hemby fumbles in the end, the other one that Maryland walks off with the game winning kick. So, look, it's week to week. You're never really sure what you're going to see out of the Terps, but this one, a lot easier to judge with a win going in the column, as Mike Loxley always likes to say, than if they manage to find a way to lose this game.
Yeah, I think obviously, like you said, it's easier obviously to do it off a win, but I think like you kind of touched on it. I think it's really easy. Loxy's talked about just kind of having to motivate and kind of keep guys positive and just when you've gone 5 weeks without a win and you feel like you're going Monday through Friday and you're trying to obviously come out with. I mean, you're not trying to lose and you're trying to right the ship and you're trying to figure out what's wrong and that missing ingredient. So I think just being able to do that, to have that validation where you get that win, and obviously having with it securing bowl eligibility. I think Maryland fans kind of take for granted, take going to a bowl game 3 years in a row. I graduated in 2014. I somehow did not see any bowl games. I did not see any NCAA tournament games. So this will be the first time since 2006, 2008 that Maryland's gone to 3 consecutive bowl games in 3 consecutive years. So I think that's kind of a big thing, but obviously I think lot to correct there, and I think just what Maryland was able to do, I think kind of offensively late is kind of what gives them momentum going into a really tough Michigan team.
Yeah, this week will certainly not be easy. Guys, you got to give a shout out to in this game. Obviously, Targhib still he leads the team in tackling. Also makes a huge play at the goal line as Nebraska's driving down the field, looking most certainly like they're going to win the game with the third quarterback for the Cornhuskers in with Chuba Purdy. Um, Dante Trader comes up big for Maryland. Not exactly sure where that ball, the second interception they had, was going, but it lands in the hands of Dante Trader, which we always love to see. And then Bo Braid, I also felt like really Maryland's defensive backfield stepped up big in this game. Obviously, an opponent that's really struggled to pass the ball throughout the season. But again, like you said, Ahmed, team that feels like they're preparing Monday through Friday, which is, I mean, what everyone's heard out of the building, what Loxley has constantly said is they have to fix whatever is happening in the game because the preparation this year has been there. The commitment to stay engaged as things have sort of gotten shaky here, have gone, frankly, really bad over the last 5 weeks, has been there. But Jaquan Shepard comes up with the TFL, makes some nice plays. Obviously, Braid, Trader, and look, I got what I asked for between Gavin Gibson and Glenn Miller. Those were the two guys that were in that nickelback position. And I think you saw um, just how much talent the defense really has and how they haven't really played to what Maryland would call the standard, what I would call, reasonable performance over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the secondary coming up big, and going into this game, it was going to be, I think, on both sides of the ball, stop Nebraska on the run, and figure out how to how to limit that front seven a little bit. So I think Maryland was able to kind of limit Nebraska a little bit on the ground. Obviously, average around 4.5 yards per carry. But when that ball went in the air, Maryland did a really good job with Tarheeb Still and Dante Trader, both of them coming away with 2 interceptions each. But again, it just felt like defensively with Tarheeb Still also leading the defense with 7 tackles as well. Felt like just the defense was kind of able to come up with some stops as well. Defense was also able to come up with turnovers, 5 turnovers for the second time this season. So I think that was kind of a needed turnaround for them. Again, especially coming off Penn State performance where they let up 51 points, and a defense that's really kind of struggled giving up the big plays. Really didn't see too many big plays. Obviously, I believe there were three big plays through the air over 20 yards. But again, Maryland was able to come away with 4 interceptions, 1 fumble. Just felt like Maryland was able to kind of do enough, and obviously being able to kind of pressure the quarterback a little bit. Even though you saw all 3 Nebraska quarterbacks in the eventual Maryland win, the defense kind of helped the offense and the field advantage in that regard.
Yeah, another thing that's worth bringing up is the penalties that Maryland committed in this game. Obviously, not. We're seeing it start to slip. Is the way that I put it. I think really started against Northwestern. We saw the 15-yard personal fouls come back. It's sort of continued over the past couple of weeks, and man, that Matt Rule certainly knows how to yell at a referee. I'll put it there. I felt like every time they showed Matt Rule, he was yelling at the referee about something, but definitely a step backwards there. But again, maybe a win helps Maryland kind of improve. I've said it multiple times, improve the mental um, capacity and capability to continue to, you know, hold yourself accountable and hold yourself to their standard in the program of not doing those things to hurt the team. And look, I ultimately feel like we're really looking at a football program. We'll see on Saturday what that product is. Obviously, probably toughest opponent of the season and a really tough spot. Um, but I think you'll really see if the win really righted the ship or they just managed to kind of steal one with 5 turnovers.
Well, I think the win, what it does is just kind of, again, just kind of helps, just kind of lift the moods and just kind of help just get momentum right, going in the right direction again. But you did mention the penalties, and Loxley, he touched on that post game, and obviously, 10 penalties for 92 yards, that's gonna raise every eyebrow under the sun. But I think Loxley touched on, just not every penalty is considered an undisciplined penalty, and he sends in plays and whatnot. And I think the first one that jumped out, I pointed it out because it was, at the time, looked like a really bad penalty in real time. That one that was called against Corey Dyches at the end of the first half that wasn't actually Corey Dyches. It looked like, I thought it live that it probably should have been a targeting against Nebraska. And I believe Corey Bullock came over. He kind of extended his arm out. It looked like a pretty light shove, kind of in replay. Nebraska player did a good job kind of selling it, and then ended up driving Maryland out of field goal position. Instead of going into the break 10-0, it was still 7-0 Maryland. So that ended up being a swing, and I think that's something where obviously you look at that, and that would have been 9 penalties for 77 yards, and sure it looks marginally better, but those are types of penalties that maybe on paper kind of looks like that, but the Big Ten officiating could have been. I mean, Maryland had 10 penalties, Nebraska had one. I think we can both agree that penalties on both sides probably could have been called a little bit better, but you touched on just whether this should right the ship or not. This Maryland team, I think, kind of going into the year, every Maryland fan thought that beating one of these Big Ten elites was going to be, that final to-do list item for head coach Mike Loxley. Talia's last game in College Park, last home game, last game in College Park. This will be a chance for him to kind of really cement that, and kind of cement that legacy. Obviously, in addition to holding every passing record, whether it's single season or career record at this point.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more in the week, but you brought it up, and I was really thinking about it today. I was driving around, and it just kind of crossed my mind: is there is a 10-0 top 3 team in the country coming into College Park this weekend. And I was actually thinking about, Leah getting that drive, getting the team down the field and kicking that field goal. And that's something that I've said it. I know it's been said many of the post game shows that we've done on the Terp Talk side, many reporters at this point, and I think many fans have said it. He hadn't really had that moment where he drove the team down the field and they were able to kind of walk one off and really have that moment. Now he gets his last opportunity against one of the Big Ten elite, a 10-0 team coming off of a win in Happy Valley, coming to College Park, then going to Columbus, and probably on to the college football playoff if everything goes their way and their program doesn't get shut down for the cheating scandal that's going on. But still, you don't get many of those opportunities as an athlete, as a football player. You probably would have had a lot more, if you became the Alabama starting quarterback, but he's here at Maryland. He's embraced that, and just what a opportunity it is for basically everybody in that room to take an all-timer and be able to win or be in or play that game. They felt like they should have won last year in the Big House, something that they haven't shied away from or been afraid of. Going into this week, though, I hope that's certainly a message in the room, and I hope it's something that's realized by guys that this is their last college football season or their last season in College Park. Just the opportunity they have and the chance to really embrace that, prepare for it, and then look, put your best foot forward and see how it goes come Saturday.
Yeah, I think obviously that aspect of it, obviously, Jashawn Jones, wrapping up 6 years in College Park, I think all of that would be, all of it be interesting. I'm sure we'll dive into that. But I definitely think just Saturday's win in order for Maryland to just pull out that 13-10 win. Obviously, again, it was far from pretty on Saturday, but just getting back in the win column, I think is kind of biggest. And credit to the run game, credit to the specialists as well. Colton Spangler, he was sidelined. He was holding, I believe he was holding kicks, so he was somewhat limited, I should say. So Brendan Segovia coming in, doing a good job, as well as Jack House, who's had an up and down first year as the starter here. But for him to, like you said, have that game winner, just have the team have that moment on the road. I think that those are all kind of ingredients for Maryland to potentially, like you said, just kind of potentially right the ship, go into this weekend, and see what happens.
Yeah, certainly big shout out for Segovia just stepping into that role. Uh, it really looks like Spangler, I guess, has done something to what is his punting leg. He did have a knee brace on the knee. That is his kicking leg. So we'll see how that kind of pans out. And one, I guess, needed shout out, something that everybody said. And Ahmed, I'll get your take on it, wrapping up the pod. When he kicked that ball, the camera work to me, I thought it was blocked.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, the reason that I knew that Maryland won was because I had the stats up and it had Maryland 13-10. So that was the only reason because I watched it and I agree. I couldn't tell. So yeah, it was some pretty awful, I would say just kind of weird announcers, weird, camera work, obviously on what you could say is the biggest play of the game. But yeah, I think every Maryland fan was kind of unsure in those next 5-10 seconds there.
Yeah, well, the Terps get it done. They're bowl eligible. Now, all of those bowl projection articles I know all of you that are listening read are now for not. I mean, well, I guess they're the reverse of whatever I just said is actually what I meant to say. They're valid now. We can start looking at that. And I mean, Big Ten football right now, past Iowa in the standings. So if you're, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, there could be a long list of 6-6 teams and or 7-5 teams. There might be a scenario where there's one 7-5 team and the rest of them are 6-win teams. It is not a good year for Big Ten football.
No, definitely not. And I think like you said, with that long list of 6-6, 7-5 teams, I think that's even further point why the divisionless Big Ten will be great.
And we'll see that this year. I was looking at the class rankings and it caught my eye this morning. 18 teams pop up on that list now. So a lot of teams to fight for some bowl spots next year, but we'll fight that battle when we get to it. Ahmed, anything else to add tonight?
No, obviously, like I opened the show, if you expected going into this weekend that Maryland Revenue Sports is going to pick up one win, and it was going to be Maryland's road win at Nebraska, I think every Maryland fan would have called you crazy. But some puzzling results for basketball. Obviously, a chance to right the ship, and it would be a signature win on the road. And so we'll see what Willard says later this week, how the team responds, and we'll see if Jim Harbaugh is able to get a hearing in front of a court instead of to be able to coach College Park next weekend.
Yeah, we certainly will see. We'll be back here midweek on the pod. Terps pick up win number 6. Just had to drop that one in there one more time for Ahmed Gafir. I am Mason Viner. As always, subscribe to the pod where you get it. Give it a thumbs up if you can. And as always, thanks for watching and thanks for listening.